Good morning, everybody out there, and welcome to the newspaper review here on Newsbuster TV. My name is Jennifer Mosu, and it's great to have you back here this week. All right, today we are straight to hitting the newspaper stands to bring you the latest developments in the country and, of course, around the world. So I've got three papers this morning spread out before me. I've got the Daily Sun, Nigerian Tribune, and the Punch newspaper. So I'll start with the Daily Sun. And with the Daily Sun, we see just by the masthead on the right, a story on page 21. It says, FG insists on December take-off date for Port Harcourt refinery. Now, that sounds good, but how good and true is it? Considering the last administration last time said that Port Harcourt refinery will be fully operational by March this year, and now it's December. Is it one of those insistencies that exist only on paper and with words? What are the actions been taken for the refinery to fully take off? A lot of people are in doubt about that, but it's left for the government to prove their mettle. All right, you can get that story on page 21 from the Daily Sun. And from that story, below the masthead, there's a short one. The Sun presents book, The Making of Modern Nigeria, on September 21st in Abuja. So for all you book lovers and bibliophiles, you might want to take a closer look at that story, and it continues on page 6. And the big story from the Daily Sun, it says, again, Atiku raises issues over Tinubu's university degree. The writers there say he is wondering how President got varsity degree allegedly without primary and secondary education. Now, that big story, it's making a lot of rounds, it's causing a lot of furor. Some people, for them, it's a funny, comical thing. For others, it is very serious and should be treated as such. Why is it a particular issue? Because there have been so many allegations on the educational qualifications of the president. One thing for certain is Nigeria's constitution has already provided that if you have at least the minimum of a school certificate, you can actually run for the office of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. But in this instance, President Bola Tinubu, it's said there have been so many aspersions cast on his educational qualifications from primary school, secondary school, university. There have been a lot of doubts and claims, allegations on the issue of his gender. I'm not saying he is transgendered or something, no. The allegations still stem from those educational qualifications. Some parties have come out to allege that he used a woman certificate and all that. But this saga, Nigerians are seeing it unfold every day. Quite an interesting one. You can get that story on page 6 of the Daily Sun. All right, moving on from that story, there's a picture there that shows Professor Michael Olowo-Koren on the fourth left, with winners of the 2023 Maths B competition during presentation of awards in Nigeria. Good for the young ones, to start using their brains to do a lot of calculated things. All right, and back to the stories on page 8. All thefts, pipeline protection, FG Lords sustains Tantita partnership. Tantita is a private security firm owned by government Ekpa, more popularly known as Tompolo. And Tompolo's security agency has been doing quite a lot for the federal government on protection of waterways and protection, of course, of all pipelines from vandals and vandalization. All right, it's a good one if that private security firm is doing what it should, because all hands should be on deck to protect everything that concerns our country's revenue-making means. All right, on page 25, FG abandons 16 billion naira Boeing 737 training simulator in Zaria. that is quite a monumental waste. We can't just have a lot of things at our disposal and throw it out at the next time, and before you know it, somebody would lay claim to it for no due cause, and that's money gone down the drain. A lot of money that could have been used to been infused in other sectors, but here we're seeing such a huge project, you know, being dusted off. I think that can actually be reworked or revamped so that people can use it to train and make good for themselves. It's not very nice for something that costly and expensive to just be let go of. All right, then on page 27, Serap gives president 48 hours to reverse ban on Vanguard, Galaxy TV, and 23 others from the presidential villa. Over the weekend, we saw press statements coming out that a couple of media firms and of course online firms would not be granted access to cover events from the presidential villa. These media people were asked to drop their media passes at the gate, and henceforth they would not be given that leeway into the villa. But SERAP, that's the socio-economic rights group, has made a petition, written a letter saying that this is unfair. People have a right to know what is going on. These journalists have a right to be able to access, you know, the presidency or the president going to the villa to cover stories. And if this is not, you know, checked properly, it could spill into something that is not savory, because at this point the president should be looking on how to foster trust amongst the people and, you know, pass on right information. You can't prune everything, you know, that people need to hear. People need to hear the truth. They need to decide for themselves. So I think this is something that needs to be looked into so that these issues can be corrected immediately. All right, in Benue, suspends as Alia Uba await Guba tribunal judgment. That's on page 26. On page 4, NACAD sues acting Central Bank of Nigeria governor, deputy governor, and the CCB, that's the Code of Conduct Bureau, over refusal to declare assets. Why are they, what is the issue? I mean, as a public office holder, especially when it comes to certain grades and ranks, you should be able to freely come out and declare your assets, because you're not meant to use your office to amass wealth, and whatever you get from your office is what is due to you, not using a government office to make a money-making venture. So I don't think they should be afraid to come out and do that publicly. All right, you can get that story on page 4 also. Now, Ohanaeze asks Tinubu to free Kanu, rolls out plans to honor past heroes. That is one political prisoner that has been held for a while, since the last administration. Yes, in the past, he had made some inciting statements against the government, but it doesn't mean he cannot or should not get a fair trial. A fair trial and the right sentencing should come, not just keeping him there and him going through so much, or his people using his incarceration to bring about other problems. But I think it's high time Akanu's case should be revisited. On today's paper, all thefts, federal government laws can tender for pipelines protection. Due process was followed in NNPCL's $3 billion Afrexim Bank loan. That's on page 6. On page 28, Ondo cocoa farmers protest alleged destruction, sale of farmlands by governments. That is harrowing and horrendous. What kind of government would do that? people are trying to sustain themselves and their families through their means of livelihood, and we're hearing now that these farmlands have been sold by the federal government. And of course, if this allegation is true, it definitely will be some big company or conglomerate who will be trying to take over these things and displace people out of the business. And instead of going through, through due process, having a chain of order in the supply chain, whereby even these bigger companies, if they need this produce, they can buy from these farmers and still get to resell for higher gains. So this isn't right. And if it's true, the government should clarify themselves on this issue. You can get that story on page 28 of the Nigerian Tribune. And on page 22, rejected commissioners, Lagos Assembly may hold another executive session today. If you're not in the know, last week the governor of Lagos State, he gave recommendations for some commissioners to be screened and nominated for several positions in his cabinet. But the House of Assembly burned 17 of those applicants, those nominees, and sent them away. And some people have come out to say that it's because the governor of Lagos State seems to be having some personal issues with the Lagos State House of Assembly Speaker. But these are just speculations. Another meeting will follow, and probably that meeting is geared towards recalling back some of those nominees for those positions. But we await to see how that goes. Alright, and there's a picture there in the middle of the Nigerian Tribune. It shows from left Archbishop of Kaduna Anglican Communion, the Most Reverend Yahaya, his wife Esther. We also see the Archbishop of Lagos Province, the Most Reverend Dr. Michael Fakwe, his wife Toyin, and the Dean of all Nigeria Anglican Communion, the Most Reverend Blessing Enida, and his wife Precious, during the presentation of new archbishops and dean of the Anglican Communion in Lagos. Alright, and on page 26, hard decisions needed to reset Nigeria's growth trajectory. This is coming from the president, and he says a couple of things here. He says servicing external debts with 90% of Nigeria's revenue cannot sustain the economy. He addressed issues of insecurity, improving the economy, and the Nigerian Bar Association president made charges to him, and the CEO of ERS, Tony Elumelu, also calls for unity or for better Nigeria. So you can get all those stories on page 26 and what happened at that conference. Alright, and Nigeria Air Force destroys illegal refining sites in rivers, kills terrorists in Northeast. Like I said, kudos to men in the armed forces for all they do. You can get that story in page 30, and those are the frontline stories from the Nigerian Tribune. And moving on from the Nigerian Tribune, we've got the Punch newspaper. Yes, above the masthead, 3 stories on Niger Republic's issue. ECOWAS demands shorter transition period from the junta. The military junta in Niger, led by General Chiani, says that they would need almost 3 years to go through the proper process of demilitarizing the country and setting up a good democracy. But ECOWAS says they're not having any of it. That democracy and the removed ousted president have to be reinstalled back into power. But you can get more of that on page 23 from the Punch newspaper. And on page 21 it says our external reserves fall by $915 million after Naira float. That's quite a lot for the business inclined. You can get that story on page 21. And on page 19, bank borrowing from Central Bank of Nigeria hits 12 trillion naira. That's a whole lot. Check out that story on page 19. And the big story there, it's still on the Cameroon dam opening. Evacuate to prevent thefts. Federal government, states warn flood-prone communities. Like I said, Cameroon will be opening up its dam, and it's going to be an overflow of flooding for recipients in Nigeria across some states that are close to that place. So people need to start planning and moving on and ahead. And NEMA advises governors on evacuation. Nasarawa, Taraba set up IDP camps. That's very good. Others, a number of others, evacuation in affected areas as flood sweeps away 2 children. It's already here, so things need to be done faster. All right, there's a picture of the president with a couple of people there, particularly he's shaking Tony Elimelu, and there are other pictures of all those gathered from the Nigerian Bar Association at the state camp. All right, you can get that story on page 7 as the president says servicing debts with 90% of revenue is a path to destruction. And of course it is. How can you use 90% of a country's total earnings to pay back debt? Something has to be kept for structural development, human capacity development, and every other thing. We can't just use what we have gained to, pay off debts. Yes, paying off debts, especially when it comes into the international scene, it can be done in stages, which I think is the proper thing to do at this point. All right, small stories there on page 21. Banks, 18 others fined 125 million naira for late filings. And on pages 1-5, on Senator Solomon Olamilekan's aid, it says that murder cases do take time to resolve. This is from the police replying to the slain aide's family. And Philip Shaibu, the deputy governor of Edun State, says, I am loyal to Obaseki and still want to be governor. So you can get more of that on page 27. A bit of sports stories. I think I have a bit of sports stories. I'll just mention them in passing. I think the sports stories actually are from the Punch newspaper, and okay, I think a bit of sports. The Punch, okay, from the Daily Sun, and we see Ajagba rebounds to win WBC World Heavyweight title. That's FA Ajagba, and the hard puncher and this qualification after he had a fight with Jan Kosobutski to win the WBC silver belt title, yes. And Super Falcon star Ajibade propels Atletico Madrid to lift Women's Cup. And we also have Enyimba Remo Stars crash out of CAF Champions League, and Haaland is a bit on the heat as he refused to sign a Liverpool shirt for a starstruck child, and this is not really going well with Liverpool with people, and Haaland says he's sorry, he cannot do that, and he told the child to bring a Man City shirt next time and he would sign for him. Alright, I think that's so much I can take on today's newspaper reviews. Thank you for being with me, and don't forget to check us out on YouTube. Make sure you like, share and subscribe, and on our other social media platforms, make sure you follow, share and like, and you can get more news stories on our website at www.newsbusterng.com. Alright, from me Jennifer, I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye for now.